Girls, this is Shelly with Made to Crave Bible Study. Boy, I had a good time laughing and learning with you guys last night. My fingers need a little massage after all that typing. So I thought it might be a train wreck because I had never done that kind of study, but I think it turned out okay. But if you guys have any suggestions about how to make it better or easier to follow, just let me know. I think Mary gave us a suggestion that if you click on the chat box on the corner, it can actually expand that chat box so that you can see the post a little bit in a bigger box and they don't go by quite as quickly. So thanks for that, Mary. I learned a lot about you guys last night, and I also learned some great tips, and I also learned that we're all kind of struggling with the same issues. And so I really wanted us to pair up with an accountability partner. If you look at some of the statistics about having the accountability partner, there's such power in it, because if you just hear an idea and say, oh, I want to get in shape or I want to lose weight, you've got about a 10% success rate of doing that. But when you start creating a plan, when you start getting accountability partners and having things written down, your likelihood of success goes up to about 95%. And that does come from some research that I've seen. So the power of an accountability partner is just huge. Today, I just want to talk to you a little bit about some of the reflections that I had as I went back over and reread some of the posts and some of the things that we talked about last night. I heard and read a whole lot of what I would consider reactive language, and some of that reactive language is things like, well, I can't do this because I travel. That's my reactive statement. Or I can't eat healthy because I don't want to cook different things for the rest of my family. Or I just can't say no to that cupcake. Whatever your excuse is or whatever your reason is, that's really being reactive to food in our lives, and it's almost like we're saying we're a victim to it, and we don't have any other choice because that's just the circumstance of life that we have. Well, when we start looking at what the truth is we do have some choices, and it's just whether or not we're willing and ready to make those hard choices. So I'm not too nerdy of a teacher, am I? I've got my little whiteboard here. I just want you to think about this very simple diagram for a minute. Last night, when we were talking about some of the excuses that we have for not doing something, not exercising, that's really some thinking in our mind that we have, and it's the way we see the world that is not really lined up with truth. Sometimes the way we see the world is lined up with just the circumstance that we're in, or we're just making excuses. So that's why the way that we think and the things that we say to ourselves and say out loud, I can't do this or I can't do that, it starts sinking in and we start believing that, and it causes us to behave in certain ways. And so do you see why in the book Lisa Turkhurst is really having us focus on this part? The way we think about food and the way we think about cravings, it has to change before our behaviors have some long-term changes. Now, here's the thing. We can change our do's or change our behaviors, and we might get some short-term results. We might lose some weight. But if we don't address what's going on in our mind and what we're thinking, then what's going to happen is these results that we got, we are probably going to revert back to old behaviors. So we kind of get stuck in this little cycle. I change my behaviors, I start behaving better, I eat right, I exercise, and I get some results. But because I've not changed this thinking, I kind of go back to my default setting. So we really do need to focus on that first. And the things that we're thinking, the things in our mind, it needs to be lined up with the truth of God. Well, how do we do that? Well, we need to saturate ourselves with God's truth instead of what we've been telling ourselves. What are our excuses? So when I think of verses that deal with the mind or how we see the world, I always think of Romans 12:2, and that is the verse about, don't be conformed to this world, but be transformed by the renewing of your mind. And so renewing our minds involves some of that memorization of Bible verses that we talked about last night. It really does mean to tell yourself different things and say it out loud. Line it up with the truth of God. Don't line it up with circumstances or excuses that you've used in the past. Another verse that I think about when I think about our mind is 2 Corinthians 10:5. That verse talks about taking every thought captive. every thought captive. Let Jesus just take our mind, and when we start telling ourselves and feeding ourselves those lies about I can't do this and I can't do that, just take it to Christ and say, look, Jesus, you just take this thought captive, because we have power. We have power through the Holy Spirit. So last night we talked about what's wrong with our want to. What's wrong with our want to is, you know what, it's not our want to or our behaviors. They need some power behind them. And willpower in and of ourselves a lot of times is not enough. We need the power of the Holy Spirit. Go back to Ephesians 3:20 and read about the power of the Holy Spirit. And we mentioned that verse last night. So when we start dealing with this and lining it up with truth, we are going to start behaving differently and doing different things. And we're going to get better, more long-lasting results. And so when I think about the truth, I always think about that the Philippians 4:8 test. What is it that I'm saying? What's in my mind? Does it pass the Philippians 4:8 test, which that is the verse that talks about dwell on these things. And the first thing it says to dwell on or to think about in your mind is it true? So when you hear yourself giving excuses, just ask yourself, is this truth from God, or is this just another excuse that I'm using to avoid making changes in my life that would get me a healthier result? So that's just my little lesson for today. And when we think about next week, we're going to be studying chapters 3 through 5, and chapter 3 is all about having a plan. And I heard a lot of discussion, or saw a lot of discussion last night about, no carbs or no sugar, or, whatever your plan has been. Truth is, any plan probably will work if you're consistent with it. So we're not going to dwell so much on the plan, like, is it Weight Watchers? Is it, no carbs? Is it the paleo diet that's kind of popular right now? We don't want to dwell on that. You can dwell on that with your partner if you want to. That's why I wanted you to have accountability partners. Talk about that plan with your accountability partner. But just make it a plan that works for you. Now, if you are having real struggles thinking, I have to give up a whole group of foods, well, don't do that to yourself. Just start off simply by saying, you know what, instead of eating this much macaroni and cheese, I'm going to eat this much macaroni and cheese. It's not, you don't have to change everything. So just start by changing the quantities of what you eat and see what kind of results that you get. Now, if the other plans work for you, that are restricting a whole food group, that's your choice and that's your plan, but it just needs to work for you. So don't be comparing necessarily your plan to everyone else's and feel like you're pressured into doing something. Make a plan, work a plan that fits your lifestyle, because many of you have young children and it would be hard to eliminate whole groups of food like that. So for this upcoming week, be reading chapters 3 through 5. Check in with your accountability buddy. Ask them, hey, what is it that I can help you be accountable for this week? I messaged mine this morning and said I need help with, restricting my diet soda intake to 2 a day. I want to exercise 3 times a week, and I also want to memorize my Bible verse. So that's what I ask my accountability partners to help me with. So check in with yours as well. Hey, just hop on the Facebook page. Let us know how it's going. Share your successes. Share your struggles so that we can encourage and help each other. Thanks so much. I'll see you next week.